Okay, we're right at 6:30. There's still people piling in. I'm Tara. I'm the artist community manager at Spoonflower. Welcome to the first ever artist surface design symposium that we're hosting with Craft Industry Alliance. This panel is all about developing your personal style, trends, and color palettes. I would love to go around and have you all just introduce yourselves, say just a little bit about yourself, just a quick intro. This group is amazing. I am so excited that you all are here. Joe, I'd love to start with you, if that's okay.
Hi, I'm Joanne Kalute. I'm a printmaker based in Sydney, Australia. And yeah, I'm really humbled to be here chatting with these industry experts and share my story about, my surface design journey with you guys and hopefully be inspired by it.
Great, awesome. Welcome, Joe. Lilla, how about you?
I'm Lilla. I'm an art agent. I own Lilla Rogers Studio, which represents 40 artists. I've been in the biz for my son plus 28 years. And before that, I was an illustrator in New York for a dozen years. And I teach at makeartthatsells.com. And I think I see some familiar faces. So I'm happy to be here and answer questions.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Lilla. Janine.
Hi, so I'm Janine Van Gool and I publish Uppercase Magazine, and Lilla Rogers is one of our lovely columnists. And I'm also a graphic designer by trade, and I've designed fabric for Wyndham Fabrics.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Janine.
Thanks, Tara.
Last but not least, Kat.
Hey guys, I have been a surface designer and artist full-time, owning my own business for the last about 5-ish years. Before that, I worked in agency world where I was an art director and designer. But yeah, now I live as a digital nomad. So I bounce around from country to country every few months, or in COVID times, I've been in Mexico most of the last year. But yeah, I license my designs professionally through brands like Target, Home Goods, Bed Bath & Beyond, and more. And I also weave education into my brand. So I have a lot of Skillshare classes, and I teach other creatives how to grow their business skills or grow their art and design skills, and do fun things like make seamless patterns in Procreate, and just fun stuff like that. So I'm really, really thrilled to be joining everyone today.
Yay, thanks, Kat. So I want to kind of dive right in and start with how you all developed your own personal artistic styles. I know as an artist myself, I get asked the question all the time, how I developed my personal style. And I think it's important to get all of your perspectives on this, because you never know who's going to resonate with your story, and we're all different. So who would like to start with this one?
I can go ahead and start.
Okay.
Okay. Joe, go ahead.
Okay, for me, I initially looked at a lot of African fashion and art in order to develop my style, because living away from Kenya in Australia, I really felt that I was disconnected from, my culture, and therefore I looked into African art and fashion as a way to reconnect myself with that culture and my upbringing. And so initially I was just looking at that sort of inspiration, and African art is very abstract and representation, and sort of imbued with a lot of symbols that are imbued with a lot of meaning. So my style I wanted to carry on that in my style. And so my style is very representational, using motifs that are imbued with meaning. And so initially I explored with using the block printing technique, because it's also like, similar to the traditional stamp printing techniques that are traditionally used in Africa. So yeah, so I just started in that way. And with time, I transitioned into digital, fully digital artwork. But from time to time, I like to still employ block printing as a way to inform my practice. So yeah, that's how I developed my style with time. And that is my inspiration for my work.
That's awesome. Do you have any personal tips on how to develop your personal style for any artists that are listening?
Well, I think it's important to reflect on who you are first, and then, identify what you want to put out into the world. And, when you tap into your identity, then you're able to create with that sort of authenticity and, not influenced by what is going around you. So I think it's important to stick with, your values at the start and try to just, carry them out in your work as you go. So, yeah.
I love that. Kat, you're up next.
All right, cool. Yeah, I think the heaviest influence on my personal style is probably the experiences I have while I'm traveling. Like I mentioned, I'm kind of living out of the suitcase for the past 5 years. And so what I like doing is getting inspired by the places I'm living in. So, for example, Thailand and Bali, both in Southeast Asia, absolutely luscious environments. There's rainforest, there's jungle. So I was really inspired by a lot of the, what was around me there. So I painted so many tropical florals because that's what I was seeing every day. So, in Mexico, where I've spent most of the last year, I got more into geometric patterns and then infusing more neutral color palettes into my work, which everything before that was just like bright and in your face. And now it's like more earth tones, and seeing how that my surroundings are kind of inspiring my artwork that way. And then another thing I like to do is combine that travel inspiration with trends that are going on at the same time. So, trend tracking in the surface design industry means looking at color palettes, substrates, patterns, iconography. I mean, anything visual, it encompasses all of those things. So I specifically hone into motifs because those can really easily translate into my design style. So to give an example of that, I illustrate a lot of animals. So if a particular animal is trending, like we've seen in the past with like alpacas, walls, unicorns, jungle cats, owls, sloths. I mean, all of these animals have been all over the place lately. What I can do is take that motif and then basically illustrate it in my own personal style. So I'm staying true to my own aesthetic, but then also keen into trends and using that as an advantage.
What is your take on the next trending animal? What do you think it's going to be?
Oh, man. Let's see. I think owls are pretty in right now, and I think those are going to go pretty far throughout the winter. And yeah, I think we're going to continue seeing this animal print, which has been going really hard for like 3 years. There is no end in sight for that. It's still going. I think we're going to see more modern approaches to animal print. So instead of more traditional palettes that are reflective of the animal, we're going to start seeing more things with like pastels or, pops of metallic, things like that to kind of make it a little bit more modern of a spin.
Awesome. All right, Lilla, how did you develop your personal style? And also, what tips can you offer artists on how to develop their own?
My advice is be you with a vengeance. Be you, be yourself. Know what you love, what you don't. Obsess the minutia, obsess the tiny things, obsess the art making, the process of making art, the materials you use, fall in love with the colors, and just make a lot of art. The way to get your personal style is by making pieces and looking and looking and looking without copying, but looking and then making a lot of pieces. And as you make them, you make discernments. You say, no, not for me. Yes, this feels right. And you go down those roads more and more, and that will naturally help you develop your style. I also say make your own trends. See trends, make your own trends. You probably have a natural instinct for getting excited about things, and follow that. Follow that, lead the way. That's how you become a superstar. That's it in a nutshell. I could elaborate, but I'll let Janine have her.
I agree with what Lilla says. For me, my you can call it personal style, is developed because I'm a graphic designer first and foremost. And so my surface pattern design journey started when I designed the very first issue of Uppercase magazine, because the design of it always has a pattern up here, and there's always a pattern down the spine since very first issue. And when I started, I was just doing like polka dots and lines and chevrons and stuff. But as the magazine has grown, and I've been doing this since 2009 now, I've been developing more and more my skills at creating very simple graphic patterns that translate to minimally just 2 colors really to be on the spine of the magazine. And so that is sort of where I entered surface pattern design, and I pitched these very simple patterns to Wyndham Fabrics. And so I create patterns that are very basic, like they almost read as single colors sometimes. And over years, I'm becoming a little more complex and adding more colors, but they're all informed by my training as a graphic designer and by inserting type and those sort of graphic treatments and trying to say something with fabric. So that's my personal style is developed from my skills and my interest in graphic design.
I want to just jump in and say that Janine's magazine is a huge source of inspiration. She did not pay me to say this, but I will accept payment afterwards. And she follows what she's excited about visually, vintage, contemporary, and her passion for what she loves to look at and put in a magazine, I think, is really inspiring. So bravo to Janine.
Well, thanks, Lilla, and thanks everybody for the love in the chat there. I appreciate it.
And subscribe.
Thanks, Lilla.
I'm an agent, I can't help it.
Yeah, you're my
I
agent
do.
too, it seems. Thank you.
I love that. And I have more questions on developing your personal style, but now that we've kind of led into this, Janine and Lilla, what makes an artist's portfolio stand out to you?
Lilla, you go first.
Thank you. You know, that's the billion-dollar question. It used to be million, but inflation. Again, it's someone who you see the authenticity of who they are. It comes through. How does it come through? How can you quantify that? You can't. But so let's get sort of practical. Amazing color, great drawing. Doesn't have to be realistic drawing, but you've crafted the shapes, your line quality, your subject matter. What do you draw? And for me as an agent, I need to see that it's work that's applicable to the hungriest markets. Can I make money for this person? Can I build their career? Can I raise their visibility and prominence? So I need to see professionalism. I need to see that there's a body of work. I run it by my team. If we all go nuts, it's probably, can be a go. We do have a list. I mean, there are always more people than we can take on. That's it in a nutshell. Lettering is good. Lettering is huge. It's a great feature. It can get you advertising work, gets you children's book, editorial, magazine, book covers, product, chocolate packaging. There's so many things that lettering can do for you. Designing letter forms in your own way. What would I say the hungry markets are? Well, I just happen to have that right here. Bulk fabric, home decor, children's picture books, wall art, gift, stationery, baby children's products, including apparel, toys, games, and more, editorial, party paper, and craft. Those are verses I wrote, so that's how I know.
I
That's
love
a
how
lot
you
of stuff.
had that.
I know. I'm teased for okay, do we want to talk about sharks? You know, I have
She's got it all. She's got it all.
I think Lilla in a way is starts a lot of trends, and it's not on purpose necessarily, but it's because she has so many students, and her classes are so informative and thorough and inspirational that I think there's always a huge batch of people that are working on themes that Lilla has assigned to them. And then other people will see, oh, what's all this happening on Instagram? Everyone's posting about this. And then people who are not in Lilla's courses will start kind of emulating what's going on there. And then I see it all when it gets submitted to Uppercase Magazine. So sometimes I can tell that Lilla was the mastermind behind a particular trend. But for me, when it comes to looking at a portfolio that really stands out, the first thing is like a personality, an authenticity and a uniqueness to the work, that it's like, oh, this person has a point of view, this person is putting themselves in their work, and they're not like being influenced by everybody else. Like I look at someone's portfolio, I want to be sure, as someone who might hire or publish someone's work, I want to be sure that what they're creating is unique, that is not infringing on anyone, for legal reasons, really, for me. Like, I don't want to publish something that was plagiarized, for example. So when I see something, a portfolio that has just really got a lot of personality and character and heart from that person, that makes me excited. And the other thing I look for is kind of like the technical ability of the artist, and that expands, like that's a wide gamut of things, and it could be like a real amazing technical prowess that they have, that their portfolio is just impeccable and beautifully produced, and whatever method they're using, that they really are engaged with that method or medium. And it can also be the opposite end of that spectrum, where there's just someone who has this really like natural, unfiltered, non-digital, just kind of like more of a primal style that they have, that is being, it just comes from them, and it's not being created by a computer or something else. So those are the three things that I kind of look for in a portfolio that interests me.
a really special style, unique,
Yeah.
authentic.
So how can an artist limit the influences of other people's work in their style so that they're not copying? Like, do you have tips? Joe, do you?
Well, for me, I think my style is quite personal to who I am. And being in Australia, I find that I feel like I'm always on the peripheral of what's happening in the Australian surface pattern design. There's a lot of what's trending right now in Australia is Australian botanicals, and a lot of artists, they're just really producing a lot of that. And there's a lot of, similar style happening. And also with the using Procreate, everything tends to look similar. So for me, I think, try not to look at Instagram too much to be influenced by what other people are doing. Try to go to art galleries, explore other things like in cooking, and try to just look at other things apart from what you see other people doing is a good way to develop your own personal style. And for me, I just try to stay away from looking at what people are doing, I think, because subconsciously it's gonna seep into my work. And
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else have any tips around that? Because it's so easy to be influenced by people. It's like you don't even know you're being influenced by them,
Mhm. Turn off the faucet is what I say. The social media faucet, sometimes turn it on, but sometimes turn it off. Go to museums, go walk down the street, go to a different neighborhood, go to a junk shop, take courses, mine or anyone's, to just get some fresh directions. Look at Janine's magazine and then shut it all off. Sorry, Janine.
No, I agree. You can't look at everybody else's work all the time and then expect to create something that's unique to you. So I totally agree that you need to unplug and stop looking at other things, and have periods where, there's periods for gathering and then there's periods for just producing. And I think Bonnie Christine mentioned this in her presentation earlier as well. And I love what she said, where when she's drawing, organic things, she's planting things in her garden from seed and nurturing them, watching them grow, and then drawing them. Like that is, she's really planting her own inspiration. And so you have to get out there in the world in a physical sense and stop looking at digital inspiration and just cultivate your own.
That's great advice. Thank you. So how do you develop a style that's commercial while staying true to your own aesthetic? Kat, do you have anything to say about that one?
Yeah. When it comes to, your art portfolio and your style, I hear from a lot of artists that are just starting out that want to get into surface design, that they want to have consistency within their portfolio. They want to have a theme, and that absolutely does matter. But when you're first getting started, I think that's the best time to everything that, my other panelists were talking about. It's time to explore and play and get inspiration from many different sources, try out different mediums. When I was first getting started, I was doing watercolor, I was making digital collages, I was doing pen and ink. And what I was doing was seeing which ones were taking off, which ones were getting more traction. This was, 8 years ago or so. So I was selling on Society 6, which is a print on demand website. So for that, I was using that to test, okay, let's try a bunch of different styles, a bunch of different mediums, and see which ones actually sell more. That's a really good metric for seeing what can be viable for commercial sales and what's not. And that really helps me kind of like weed out the things that maybe commercially weren't going to be as viable, but in terms of being a fine artist, I can still enjoy doing that in my free time. But one of the things that really stuck out way back then was, and you guys remember like 2012, 2013, it was watercolor wreaths with like this cutesy messaging and bounce calligraphy all contained inside. And I was doing that, and that absolutely took off, but you don't really see that around anymore. Like that was really popular 8 years ago, but it's not really popular now. So if I would have just stuck with that one aesthetic, that one idea that did well for me when I was getting started, my brand would be pretty dead right now. So I think it's really important to kind of keep an eye on how your portfolio is growing and changing over time. Don't be afraid to infuse some new ideas, try out a new medium, maybe go, with a brand new thing that you've never done before and kind of see how that goes. So, for me right now with my brand, wallpaper is, it's one of my best product categories. And so I'm keeping a big eye on what's going on with wallpaper. So if we're seeing this shift towards a lot of botanicals, which has been, doing really well for me for the past year, it's continuing to grow, then what I'm doing is I'm boosting my portfolio with leaves, flowers, everything in my own personal style, watercolor with all the fine white space in between. And just so I can remain relevant. And so people are still continuing to purchase my products. So I would say, continue, growing your portfolio, evolve. Don't be afraid to cast a wide net, especially when you're first getting started. And that'll help you not only figure out what sells well, but it'll help you figure out what you actually enjoy doing. Like, do you like illustrating cats all day, or do you want to try something completely different, like geometric patterns? Like, it'll help you figure out what you're really leaning towards as an artist.
That's really good insight. Did anyone else have anything to say about that?
Yeah, look at what's being sold at the companies that you love, whether it's anthropology or whatever it might be. Don't copy, because they already have those people. They're not going to take a copy. And it's also a negation of who you are, and it's illegal. But what you want to do is get a flavor, a savvy, a sense of the market. What kinds of looks are happening? What kinds of subject matter pieces are being produced, and what's the usage? Are people going to wear it? Like Kat says, wallpaper is something on the wall. You can push the boundaries. You can push, and maybe something that you typically would see on wallpaper might be incredible on a toy or vice versa. So you can play around, but the more you look and understand why people want to buy the item, the more you will get a sense of commercial viability.
Great. I think we got some really good tips on developing personal style. I think we should move on to the trend portion. Why is it important for artists to stay on top of trends? Kat.
What do you mean by on top
Yeah.
of trends?
Like, say it's like the animal of the trend is llama right now. How do they stay on top of that llama trend? Like, where do they look for these trends? How do they spot trends? Like, how do they track trends and just stay on top of it? Why is that important? And why are trends important to keep track of?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of just staying on top of trends, when it comes to surface design, if you don't pay attention to the market, then you're really just going to get left behind. So, of course, I have designs from years ago that are still earning me income. That's the nature of licensing. But if I stopped contributing on-trend designs to my portfolio, my licensors would, slowly begin to fade over time. That bouncy calligraphy, watercolor wreath thing that was, popular a decade ago. If I was dead set on that, and I didn't really veer away or try anything new, then my royalties just simply would have dried up. I wouldn't be earning as much money anymore. So if you want to succeed as a commercial artist and surface designer, I think it is really vital to, like you said, stay on top of trends and kind of know what's relevant. And that way your brand can stay relevant.
How do you all feel about trends in general? Follow trends or be the trendsetter, or a mix of both? How do you all feel about that?
I'll say that I'd prefer to be the trendsetter.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're an artist or a designer or someone who makes something and it's coming from like a source of passion within you, then you're going to be a trendsetter because you're creating something that's coming from you. But that's a decision to make, and it's also fine if your intention is to be a surface pattern designer that is involved in trends and who has like the fresh stuff out it's always like if llamas are the thing of the day and you want to be the person creating llama stuff, that's fine too, and it's just, I think it's a different way of approaching your work though. I think one way is coming from you, and the other way is you're getting information through observation, and perhaps you're reading trend reports and such, and looking at what colors are trending and that stuff, and you're letting that inform your aesthetic and your decisions for your creative business. I think those are two ways that you could approach a career in surface pattern design, but I think you need to decide which one you want to do, because I think it's hard to do both simultaneously.
I think how Janine broke it into the two sort of camps, and they're both fine, of course, and there's crossover and there's merging, and it's not a distinct line, of course. I like to be oppositional, so I would look at things and then rebel against them. That's one way to go. That can be fun, but it can, if you go too far, then it's not commercial, it doesn't make any money, but maybe it will. When I started out as an illustrator, my style was very European at a time when it was airbrush in the 80s and very masculine. And I was what I called myself a feminine feminist. And the women I drew looked different. And what was a generic person was a white man in a magazine illustration. And to push that, I like to push, but and that kind of push, along with hopefully my style was strong, that allowed me to be known. And when you're known and have your brand as yourself, you get really cool jobs. You get the really interesting gigs. So that's really nice. Thank you, Daniela. you get known for your work. Now, that's not to say you can't have a range. You can't do things that are on trend in your way and sell them to mass. You can do the whole gamut. Why not? It's all good.
How about you, Joe? I'd love to hear from you about how you feel about trends in general.
I think it's good to be trend aware, to know what's happening in the outside world, but don't be a trend chaser because it's very exhausting. Trends are changing every other day, especially in fashion. Now it's on a weekly basis. So I think I'd advise people to look at creating within evergreen themes. You know, I know Shannon McNabb of Sketch Design Repeat does design prompts that are related to evergreen themes. So you can look at that if you have no idea what to draw. And this is just like holiday themes, florals will always be in fashion, animal prints. You can start that way, and even geometric abstracts. So I think, yeah, it can be very exhausting when you're chasing trends. So try to just stick with those evergreen themes.
Yeah, absolutely. Kat, did you have anything else to say about trends? I know you have this great Skillshare class all about trends. So I'd
Trend
love to talk
forecasting
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think that there is definitely a way that you can follow and key into trends and use them in a strategic way to boost your portfolio and earn income without being a sellout. So, you know, when I lock into a trend, I want to find a way that I can incorporate that particular idea into my portfolio without it looking completely out of place compared to my existing artwork. So I'm going to do an example. Let me think. Cottagecore. You know, everybody hears cottagecore right now. It's like a fashion aesthetic that's idealized this really rural, folksy life. It's like bicycles with floral bouquets and, you know, ladybugs and dried flowers on the wall, stuff like that. Like that's cottagecore, and you're hearing about it everywhere. Everyone has like a cottagecore lookbook right now. So, you know, for me, what I wanted to do is like, okay, I should definitely key into this trend somehow, but make it authentic with my existing portfolio and true to my own artistic voice. So I thought about some motifs that you see that could really fit into that idea. So it was like strawberries and leaves, really cute and simple daisies, sunflowers, mushrooms. So I illustrated all these things that are under this overarching trend, but all of these illustrations really feel at home with my portfolio. So I think that's the main difference here. It's you see the sunflower I painted to fit in with this cottagecore theme, and you easily recognize it as being my illustration style, the way that I watercolor and work with blooms and white space. But yeah, I can also cash in on something that's probably going to sell better than something that might not be on trend. So, you know, for example, those motifs that I illustrated, they've all gotten picked up by licensors in the past few months. And yeah, it's going really well. So I think, you know, it's a fine balance, right? It's kind of knowing what's relevant and what's in style, and then making sure it makes sense with your artistic voice, and that there's a way to fuse those two together. So, you know, there's a lot of trends that happen that have nothing to do with my own artwork and doesn't really make sense for my portfolio. So I stay away from those. But things that I'm like, oh, that is a good fit, that fits in really well, and I may as well, you know, key into this and cash in and, you know, get some relevant sales while that artwork is relevant and on trend.
Do you all read any trend reports, or how do you spot those trends? I know like it really starts with fashion and then trickles down. Is that, do you have any tips on where to look for these trends, like to spot them super early and make them how, you know?
Yeah, I'm pretty much, oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm all over the place with that. You know, I look at, you know, obviously Pantone Color of the Year is a great place to start. New York Fashion Week, they, you know, post to their color palettes for the season, and that's a really good indication of what's going to be on trend in the later months of the year. I think the easiest place to look is exactly what Lilla was talking about earlier. It's you want to find the places where your audience is shopping. So my audience is primarily, you know, women in their 20s to 50s who are into home decor, fashion, and cute gift ideas. I'm 34, and everything that I just listed also applies to me. So that makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, so I look at where my customers are shopping. So the chances are whatever Anthropologie or Target is selling is also going to resonate with my audience. So what I'll do is I'll browse through their collections and new lookbooks, and I'll look for ways to, you know, find patterns, find similarities. So, you know, if Anthropologie, you know, we keep bringing up leopard print because it's been such a it's such an iconic trend for the past 50 years. So if anthropology is all over animal print and that's what is everything in their lookbook in their news section, then chances are my audience is also going to resonate with animal print design. So that's a really easy way for me to incorporate animal print into my portfolio, infusing my own artistic voice into the designs and have it be relevant and sell. So, ultimately what I would recommend there is looking for trends in the places where your audience is most active, and then looking for similarities. So, H&M's new collection have a bunch of teal. That's a really good color combo that you should consider incorporating into your own artwork. So what you can do is just, especially when you're first getting started, is piggyback off all that trend research that these giant brands definitely did, and then use it to your advantage.
Lilla, did you want to chime in on that? You were about to say something.
I did buy a lot of trend reports some time ago, and I really enjoyed them, but they're very costly. And I do think there are other ways, as Kat mentioned. I also think, as someone said in the chat, if you see it in Anthro or you see it in Target or these places, it's too late. Unless I spoke on a panel at PrintSource. Oh boy, I'm going to say 10 years ago. Owls. And somebody asked me, how long, owls are over. What about foxes? Because foxes had a moment. And I said, foxes will be okay, but not for long. And the reason is they don't draw well. You have to see them by the side. Owls are looking right at you. They're very graphically strong with the eyes, the nose, the face, the ears, the feathers, the shape. They're very, very strong. That's why they lasted so long. Foxes didn't. So, but what I always did is, for me, I looked at, and what I look at in taking on an artist, sure, no one is from Mars, okay? We're all on this planet. We're all bouncing like molecules off some similar visuals, right? We're part of the cultural conversation, but do it in a fresh way. The reason why owls kept going is because they could be done in so many different styles. It's such a simple, recognizable form, and that was a long time ago. Now, what are trends? So Kat was talking about the bicycle and the flowers. My artist years ago did a lot of that for, I think she did it for Anthro and some places. But she did it, first of all, in the most gorgeous watercolor. And she did it before I'd seen anybody else do it, so long ago. And I don't know if it was her thing because she bicycles. So what are you passionate about? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? What do you like to do? If you got on a bicycle, what would your bicycle look like? Would it be vintage? Would it be new? Would you have flowers in the basket? Or would you have like cookies that you're delivering? What would you put in there? How can you make it yours? And that way you can take something that's happening in the cultural conversation and add your spin.
And to continue on that, Lil, I would say that we've been talking about trends as like a motif, like the animal or a cottage core or something. Like those are very specific things. So maybe you need to look at a trend, like what's happening that's creating that trend. Like why are we drawn to cottage core and such? Like what is that feeling that we're all searching for? And look at that as your inspiration. What is that feeling? What are the reasons why we're into these things right now? And that'll have a lot more longevity than just a motif that comes and goes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I would say like a trend right now in the past year or so is activism through illustration. And that's an amazing trend that I love to see. And I think what's great about that as a trend is, first of all, it's good for the world if we're using our talents for spreading good messages. And it also is part of that thing that I talked about when I look at a portfolio, is I want to see someone's personality and their authenticity. So if someone's willing to, you know, put their talent and create something that's activism of something, I think that's terrific to see in a portfolio. And I think that's a trend that I can get behind anyway.
I love that so much that you said that, Janine. That's absolutely right. And there's so many messages of positivity going around. That's a trend. And I love that. And it's so vulnerable for us as artists to tap into stuff that's so deeply personal and put it out into the world. So I completely agree with that. I love that. Does anyone else have anything to say about that or resonate with?
I love it. I love taking on an artist that has a political point of view and expresses it. I think we're all on this planet. We need to all help. We need to all do what we can. You have a voice. Your work is going to be seen by lots and lots of people, sometimes millions. Why not do something that contributes the best you can? Move the needle forward.
Absolutely.
And I want to just tag on to what Janine said. If you get to the deeper reason for something, that's going to guide you better, and see if that feels right.
Honestly, that is some of the best advice I have heard. I commend you. Thank you so much. I know our artist community really appreciates this. What can we talk about next? Color palettes. What makes a good color palette?
It's pretty.
It's pretty, but like technically speaking,
like
what really draws your eye? How do you catch people's interest with color palettes?
It's unanswerable.
Joe, your patterns are so bright and vibrant. Do you have anything to say about?
Is that me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
I
do you-
think for me, I start with the feelings I want to evoke. That's a good starting place.
Yeah.
And then if I want to evoke some bright, joyful feeling or a calm feeling, that's where I'll start with. And then I'll do a bit of research on Pinterest and anything that I just apply color intuitively most of the time. So I'm not an expert on color. There's so many people who their classes on, you know, how to use colors, color psychology and that kind of thing. But for me, I think I just have a sort of knack to use it intuitively. And yeah, and I also gravitate towards bright saturated colors like yellows, aqua, oranges. I think just the colors I grew up with. So in that sense, I can't say I'm a color expert, but yeah, I think I employ color in a way that people can respond to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Joe, you mentioned how you think of color as a way of evoking a feeling. And oh wait, am I muted? No. Okay. Yeah, I resonate with that too. And for me, I think about the product that I'm designing for. So if it's something, you know, I mentioned wallpaper earlier. I've been, you know, more heavily into that in the last year because COVID, it's been stay at home. Everyone's been remodeling. So wallpaper has been surging. But yeah, with wallpaper, it's the color palettes I'll choose will generally be a little bit more sophisticated or muted, something that people want on their walls. Whereas if it's saying, oh God, here's my case, it's like bright pink, very vibrant. I have a little bit more leeway there. No one is going to want their wallpaper to look like this, covering their entire room, maybe a statement wall. But I think about what I intend the product to be. So if it's something where maybe someone wants a little bit more sophisticated, refined tones, then I'll use a more refined palette. If it's something where, especially with fashion, if I'm doing skirts or something, I can really just go crazy with that because people are more comfortable wearing bright and bold colors there than they might be, you know, slapping it on their walls. Yeah.
I have an easy tip. I love a muddy neutral and an electric color together. That's sort of an easy. I think it's important to make a mess off of your palette and mix up all kinds of colors and subtle subtle differences between them, have a lot of, if you're using watercolor, and I do think it's so good to use traditional media at least some of the time when you play, and then when you get on digital, you have a better understanding. So when you buy traditional media, get the cobalt blue, the cyan, the cerulean, the French ultramarine, the ultramarine blue, like 5 different primary blues, because they each do, they have personalities, they do different things, and you get to know them. And then take a drop of something else in that little pile of puddle of color and see what subtle things you can get. Subtlety. Now, that's one thing. Number 2 is it is cultural. We're seeing, thanks to Black Lives Matter, more vivid colors, Joe, African derivative, Afro-Caribbean, bold, intense colors. That's definitely something I'm seeing. But again, there's no one thing.
I think it's fine as well to have your favorite colors and
Yeah.
and play with them. Like when I think about Uppercase magazine, at some point, and I think it was issue 16, I just created like in designs where I do the design for the magazine, and I just put together a palette of the colors that I was using a lot for the magazine, and I've been using the same ones pretty much ever since. And then occasionally I'll just drop in a new color that speaks to me in the moment, and I'll put that into my Uppercase palette, and it'll show up here and there. But I'm quite comfortable with staying in this zone of colors that speak to me personally, that I really like. So that's fine. Why not? And then when it comes to, if you're doing fabric or something, for example, I know people have asked me this before, like, should I present the same design in multiple colorways? And that's okay to do, but I don't think it's required right at the beginning, because if you do have a relationship with the licensor that's working with you, they might suggest that they have some colors that they know that their particular market is interested in, and you can always adapt it for those requests. So I think the first thing is just, you have to love what you're creating. So go with colors that you love.
You touched on this a little bit, Janine, but do you think it's important that once an artist really resonates with a certain color palette, how important is it to stay with that same color palette? I mean, I know that a lot of artists are recognizable by their color palettes. So how important is that to just stay in that one box? You know, what's the balance there?
I think people worry too much about what they should be doing, and they should just do what they want to do. Like, I think that's why we become artists, right?
Yeah.
So stop worrying and just create the work that you want to do and see what happens.
That is exactly what I wanted to hear. I mean, I feel like people get really stuck on what trend should I follow? What colors should I use? What should I be doing? And it's just really about that deeper meaning that y'all already touched on. So this conversation is super awesome. We got through all of our questions and we still have time. So Nicole, who's been monitoring the chat, although Lilla, you've been really awesome at just answering those chat questions as they popped up. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions for this group of amazing and talented women, pop it in the chat right now.
Or the Q&A.
Or the Q&A, there's time. There's time.
There.
What do we got?
I want to real quick touch on what Janine just said. Stop thinking like, oh, I need to have a little bit more before it's complete. Stop overthinking it. I get a lot of students ask me, how many pieces do I need to have in my portfolio before I start, putting everything on Instagram? And I'm like, you start with one, you get one up there and you grow from there. And, nothing is ever 100% final or perfect. Like, no piece of artwork I've ever uploaded, I'm like, this is 100% done, but it's done enough, right? Like, you could fiddle and tweak things until the end of time, but that'll just keep you from continuing to create new pieces of art. So don't let any sort of limiting beliefs around I don't have enough quantity or the quality is not good enough. Just start somewhere, and we all grow over time.
It's like sports. It's so much as a mental game. You have to figure out ways to stay motivated, deal with any negative voices. When you find yourself looking outside too much, that's going to take you away from your core. So go back inside. As I said in the very beginning, when you mush that color, and it just feels so good to make that mush and then carve a line around it, that's what you love. Get back to what you love. That's going to come across. When I was an illustrator, I realized, oh, people buy your joy. They buy my joy. Even if I'm doing a really intense illustration for the New York Times about a really heavy topic, if I did a piece on the creation of the Holocaust, the plan for the Holocaust, and I was crying and it was really tough, but and joy isn't the right word, but I was really engaged. And when you look at a piece of art, you can see if a person is really connecting, you can tell, and people buy your joy. I say this, those of you, my students who are in here, people buy your joy. So what is it that makes you feel joyful? What is it? And that's a mission. It's a discovery. It's a treasure hunt. It's a process.
People love you, Lilla.
Oh,
Everybody
I
loves
love them. I love them. I love seeing my students. I love the comments. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Well, see, and I always say this, I'm saying this to you out of my joy for wanting to help you.
Absolutely.
And that sustained my career for 40 years. So it is the magic for success, for monetizing, for abundance, for what's lucrative. It's true. It can be scary to be like, ooh, what if everybody hates my weird art? I also say, what's the one I say about weirdness? Monetize your weirdness. Yeah. So, monetize your weirdness. It's never held me back.
I love that.
We should do a thing on color for your magazine, or maybe a course together. You have to do color. Yeah.
Gosh.
Last time I spoke with Janine, I said to her on the spot, hey, can I do a column for your magazine?
And here we are.
And here we are. But being with you makes me think of things. What can I say?
That's sweet.
Yeah, Janine, I had the privilege of looking through your submissions for your last surface design, for your last issue.
Yeah.
Like how I was going through the portfolios, I'm like, how did she even whittle it down to this group? Like everyone's so amazing. It's just such a keen eye that you have. I was very impressed.
Well, thanks. And I appreciate Spoonflower helping me out with that
Super
issue
fun.
as well. Yeah. Well, it comes to an abundance of riches for that particular issue, with lots and lots of submissions for the surface pattern design issue. And I just want to say, if anyone entered and they didn't get in the magazine, it's not because it wasn't good work. It's just because I only have so many pages.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I loved all of the portfolios. So yeah.
Yeah.
Tough.
So one of the things I try to do in uppercase is I try and recognize the trend. If I see one like, oh, there's lots of llamas, or I'm actually chickens. Chickens was a trend that I recognized when I was going through like 800 submissions. So I put a few representational chickens in the magazine to honor the fact that this is a trend that people are interested in right now, or 6 months ago or a year ago. So that's in there, but it's not like I put in 20 chickens. There's like a couple chickens as a representation of what's happening. So, but that's my job as an editor, is to identify a wider range of things that people are interested in.
You picked the best chickens, didn't you?
Well, there were lots to choose from.
Well, but you pick, and that's the thing. If lots of people are doing something, X subject matter, you want to stand out among all the people doing the various on trend topics. So make yours really, really special, which comes back to your chops, your technique, your medium, your drawing ability, your line quality, texture, color, all the basic, your design, all the basic principles. That is what's going to sustain you. Then you can draw anything and it's going to be really special.
This is amazing insight. I love it. I had Nicole pop in, who's been monitoring the chat. We've got about 5 minutes left. Nicole, have you seen any questions that you'd like to ask?
Hi, everybody. This has been such an amazing session. Thank you so much for all of your time and for answering a lot of the comments as they came in. We do have a few that weren't answered. They were kind of, it's a continuation really on the color conversation for one of them. Rachel Walker dropped a question. Would you say color is almost secondary to design as it can be changed easily to suit clients and trends needs? Or would you say that it's just as important as the motifs in your designs that you are creating?
I think color is generally the first thing that people notice when they look at any sort of, anything around them, any product. But yeah, I put a lot of emphasis on color. So for whatever, if I do one design, I'll create, oh God, like 10 to 15. I'm trying to narrow it down, but it's hard. You kind of get up on this tangent, like 10 to 15 different color palettes out of one design that I illustrate. So when I'm putting something together, I know that, okay, maybe the leaves I'm painting them blue right now with watercolor, but I know I'm going to want to see what they look like, maybe like purple or red later on. And I'll just kind of digitally edit that in Photoshop. So as I'm painting, yeah, I do definitely keep in mind, how could I, what other colors could I explore? What else could work well with this particular motif? Because honestly, I mean, it's such a snap to digitally edit any color, even for the analog paintings, the watercolor paintings I do. So yeah, I would say, yeah, it's a really easy thing to adjust and tweak. And I do have a lot of clients that come back to me and they want to, license a particular design, but they have a specific color palette in mind, and they'll just send over the palette and I can make a few tweaks and align it to what their needs are. So yeah, I think it's a flexible thing, but it also really showcases the variety of your portfolio as well.
Yeah, and I agree with Kat. And that the people who are licensing your work, typically, say it's a fabric company or wallpaper company, like they themselves have the ability, they have the color sense as well. So they can look at something that's in a different colorway than they particularly are looking for, but they can appreciate the content of the design and still license it. And like Kat said, you can tweak it for them. I think when it comes to color, whether like the level of importance that color has, it really depends on the kind of work that you're creating. So for example, the simple patterns that I've created for Wyndham fabrics, it's just 1, 2, or 3 colors at a time. That's very flexible in the colors that we choose at the very end and what is going to be done. But if you're doing something that's more complex or watercolor something, perhaps your original color is more important with what you're starting out with.
I want to just mention 2 trends. People are asking, name trends. Diversity and multicultural.
Another one is sustainability. And I think you touched on that in the Spoonflower trend report. I was just going through it on the blog, and yeah, that's something that's really relevant at the moment. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Inclusivity has been, along those same lines, just massively, and it's a great thing to see brands really, really embracing. Yeah, I think it's one of those things as well. It's like these self-care, positive sentiments that are all kind of coming into play after the past year and a half we've had. And I think it's nice to see brands going in the right direction there.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question. So I really wanted to touch on the future as we look forward. And there are a few other questions, but honestly, I think that's a great note to leave things at. So I'm going to wrap things up on my end.
Thank you so much for your help, Nicole. She's been helping me out behind the scenes all day, and I so appreciate it. We are about right at time. You guys, I am walking away from this so inspired and empowered. And I know that our artist community has so appreciated your time. And I just appreciate you guys so much. Does anyone have any final words other than that? Otherwise, it's time. It's time to say goodbye.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much for the invite. It's been great to catch up with you all.
Thanks, Kat.
I really enjoyed it. And I just want to tell everybody, don't give up. Just keep going.
Absolutely. I love it. All right, friends. Ending this session. Have a good rest of your night. And Joe, rest of your day in Australia.
Thank you. Yeah. And remember to take creative risks, everyone.
Yes.
That's the number one thing. Yeah.
Excellent.
Perfect. Perfect.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Bye.